Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This week, DS9, Q-less, not clueless. Something we've been accused of at times, but Q-less. Hey, don't you be Q-less or clueless. I'm a Patreon member. Support us there, patreon.com/IABD. Support the whole network, the mothership, us. It helps us get more content. You get the bonus content. You can see us. You can see the video of us. You get the extra stuff behind the, not even behind the curtain, behind the second curtain in the green room, all that stuff, and special episodes and everything. So it don't cost nothing. It costs a little bit, but not much. And we really appreciate it, and we'll love you forever. Just like I don't know, you might not. This is Q-less, and It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
Keith.
This is Stephen.
And I'm Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk Q-less, which is the only Deep Space Nine episode to feature Q and Vash. First impressions.
Oh, I'm disappointed to hear that.
I'm not.
It's me either.
I'm glad that I blocked out again for long enough. And I hate telling Jimmy things like this because it's like, oh, sure, it's great. It'll be fine if I just spoil everything whenever. But I'm pretty sure that this came up at some point, months ago, whenever, that Vash was going to be on Deep Space Nine, and of course Q was as well. And I even had to have seen this episode because I'm pretty sure I watched all of the first couple of seasons. And I still didn't remember it was coming up. And I kept that reference was in my head the whole time about like, oh my God, you hit me. Jean-Luc never hit me. You know, that thing. Just wait for that to come up. Like, when's it going to happen? So it already sounds like I enjoyed it for the novelty of it more than the both of you did. And
probably
if I think about it, I can probably come up with some reasons why, but I'll let you guys introduce those things.
This feels more like the earlier Q that I didn't care for. And I think I didn't care. I didn't feel like Q and Vash had any chemistry. Certainly not the chemistry she had with Picard. And I think my feeling for the whole episode can be summed up by an exchange Sisko has with somebody who says, it's another one of his jokes, and Sisko says, I'm not laughing. That sums up my whole feel, because I think the Q episodes I like is when I'm laughing, and I did not laugh in this episode. So
now Q isn't a consistent or good, well-written character in this episode. He doesn't fit with the DS9 vibe anyway, so it just feels awkward. I am sad that this is Vash's last appearance in Star Trek. I'm still fingers crossed that maybe Star Trek Picard Season 3 will work her in somehow, because I like her. And but the whole her leaving with Q did not pay off well at all. This was such a disappointing payoff.
And I read that one of the reasons they wanted Q in here was to show that, and I feel like this is going back and retconning. This is retconning back in the 90s. Or maybe not retconning the thing they did in the 90s, which was they kept saying, well, we want to show the difference between DS9 and TNG through the way they reacted to Q. It's like, okay, but I wanted to see a good episode. But another thing is there was talk of Vash coming back and being more involved, and it just didn't happen, which, again, is disappointing.
I think Vash would have fit in fine on DS9, especially interacting with Quark. I would have liked to have seen that.
Yes.
Q, I agree with the idea of bringing them over to show how they react differently. So just do a single bar scene where he shows up and Sisko slugs him. That's all you need. You don't need a story.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she and Quark were great. That's the spinoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get a lot of Dax and Quark that have the same chemistry, so maybe that's why they didn't need her, but still.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We actually start the episode with Bashir shamelessly hitting on a Bajoran nurse who seems into it, and O'Brien watching, looking disgusted, and also making sure that Bashir doesn't prey on this poor girl. Right?
That wasn't my take on that, but I mean, how did you know she was a nurse, first of all?
Oh, I thought she was a nurse. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe I made that up. Maybe I made that up in my head. It just says Bajoran woman on IMDb, played by Laura Wilkinson.
Yep.
Yeah,
who's best known for this role. So
yeah.
It seemed essentially like she was a random woman in a bar with
You're probably right.
And O'Brien was kind of like, I wouldn't say disgusted, but sort of like, this pickup thing is actually working or whatever. That whole
gets
thing.
to a question I will get to briefly. Bashir talking about his medical exam, or essentially his MCAT, reminded me. It sounded like when I talk about my LSAT, how I did on my LSAT for law school. Because
did it work?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the story does, but I finished. I had the top score where I took it out of the 120 people that took it there. I finished in the 99 percentile, and that's how I got into law school. And my friend and my girlfriend at the time, the night before, were like, "Hey, if you get down to the end, just put C. Just put C if you run out of time." And I shook them off like, "Oh, I think I know what I'm doing with standardized tests, but thank you." And so the next day comes and I get down to the end. I have 2 left and there's like 30 seconds left. I went C. The answers were C, and that's what got me the 99%.
No.
And that's how I got into law school.
Oh my God.
I think. I'm pretty sure that's so. And I apologize to both of them. I took them both out to dinner many times since then. But my question about Bashir, especially based on what you guys already said, was, is Bashir Geordie or Quagmire?
Bashir, this is like, I think when they started the series, they didn't know what Bashir was. So for the first dozen episodes, they made him a womanizer, and then that goes away. Okay. And the quicker that goes away, and his only flirtation is with Garrick, the happier I am. Because he and Garrick, very flirty, even though they never officially made anything out of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he does get a girlfriend in the final season. Sorry, Keith. But the lecherous behavior that he's demonstrating now does not continue. Right. They actually find what his character is, and they pursue that. So
he's like Quagmire, because it took him 19 seasons, but now Quagmire is...
Yeah, except it takes Bashir like 9 episodes instead of 19 seasons. They think O'Brien is relieved to be saved by Cisco calling them because they can't get the hatch open, and apparently Deep Space Nine doesn't have transporters now, I guess. Because they're like, life support's failing, we have to get this open. It's like, can you just beam them out?
Yeah.
I don't know. Seemed really dumb. 3 passengers, we see Dax, we see some extra, and then big reveal, it's Vash.
I was excited, actually, when I saw
that. Yeah, I like Vash. Jennifer Hetrick, love the character. Yep. She fits in well in this world, as we mentioned, just not with Q.
Very.
And then, because it was...
And then we get the Q reveal that he's working on the shuttle.
Oh, great. Q.
I wanted to talk about that, because when you guys were talking about that before, it's just, I kind of enjoyed the idea of demonstrating is in as many ways as possible, honestly, that the Q interactions weren't going to be quite the same in this world. I don't think you came right out and said it before, but I think the reason why it was working so well on the Enterprise was because of how stiff they all had to act most of the time. And it's just like this kind of ribaldry. I can't think of the right word for it, I guess, but some sort of like that kind of introduction of, oh my God, what's happening to these people, them having to like, oh, we're so serious and having to weather it in that way and have to be pulled out of their comfort zones in that sense. Was what was interesting. But then you get on DS9, everyone's they're pretty well weathered, or they're at least they're already unorthodox.
I like that take, Keith, from the aspect of, maybe this doesn't work perfectly. I'm trying to get my mind around it, but I think you're right. On TNG, that might be why his jokes land better for us. Even if
you need better straight men. Straight men is the thing.
Yes. Whereas once he gets to DS9, they're like, what is your deal?
It's like, oh, that guy is like, all right, fine. No,
we're not mad.
We know it's you. We know it's you.
Yeah.
We know it's you. Come on, let's just do it.
Cisco went to a seminar on him. He knows all about him.
Yeah. Again, Cisco, I'm not laughing. Yeah.
I was a little confused on the timeline because apparently Vash and Q had a number of adventures together, it sounds like. And then she left him 2 years ago, but it's been less than 2 years since that episode aired where they left. So I guess there's some time travel involved, which Q could do time travel. Right. So he left her slightly back in time in the Gamma Quadrant. But of course, that is a big deal for everybody else. For Deep Space Nine, because like, we discovered this wormhole 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and now this woman's been there for 2 years. Let's ask her a bunch of questions. Okay, makes sense there.
Wait a second though. I thought my understanding was that she had left the Enterprise 2 years ago, and that this other thing might have happened fairly recently.
No, she said she left him 2 years ago. She'd been in the Gamma Quadrant for 2 years.
Interesting.
And also, it hadn't quite been 2 years since she left the Enterprise, but I think there's some time travel involved, was my point. But Q can travel through time. I think he moved her around different places. O'Brien knows Vash, knows Q, but knows about Vash's relationship with Picard, but doesn't know that Vash left with Picard, or left with Q. So the Enterprise rumor mill, I guess, has a few holes in it. Because O'Brien wasn't personally present for any of these events, but, he plays poker with the senior staff, so I guess he'd hear about some of it. But that's a pretty big thing to leave out the gossip mill that Vash left with Q.
It sounded like he made the connection at some point eventually. I feel like he even mentioned that he knew that they were on the Enterprise together at the same time, and he mentioned the Robin Hood thing. So
he did, but that was well after the part where nobody could figure out how she'd been in the Gamma Quadrant for 2 years, even though the wormhole had just been discovered. And at that point, he should say she left with Q. Probably Q's around, but he doesn't.
Is that the section where somebody says they were close friends and somebody else is like, "You mean the captain's woman?" Or something
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
isn't that what they say?
Basically.
Well, no. All right. So it was
close friend. O'Brien met Vash once. She was Picard's close friend. And Sisko's like, "Nah, she doesn't seem like Picard's type." And O'Brien's like, he likes a challenge.
Yeah.
Which was kind of fun. Bashir shamelessly flirts with Vash, of course, because
right.
We get this scene where Vash is checking all of her belongings into the assay office, and the Bajoran clerk there, played by Van Epperson, is just cracked me up. He's best known for The Green Mile, Mr. Woodcock Hersher. He may have looked familiar to you. He was recently in an episode of American Horror Stories, but it's a small one-scene role, but I enjoy that actor, and I thought he was fun here. He will play a different character in an episode of Enterprise, and he played a different character in Time's Arrow Part 2 on Next Gen earlier this season. He was in the morgue, but yeah, I like that actor. He's a fun character actor. The Daystrom Institute wants to talk to her. I like all these name drops for the Daystrom Institute. It keeps coming back up. I feel like we won't get to see the Daystrom Institute until Star Trek Picard season 1, but I like that they reference it a lot. Daystrom wants to talk to her, but she was already suspended from them twice. I love that bit of Vash backstory. And Vash chooses Prophet every time, which makes her the perfect foil for Quark and builds that relationship. But she does eventually accept Sisko's offer to send her to Earth. I do want to know why she's unpacking her bags, though, when she's leaving in like a day. I guess just so Q can repack them with the snap of his fingers.
Yeah. What O'Brien says about Vash and Picard is close friends if you follow my meaning. He doesn't say she's the captain's woman, but he alludes to it.
Yeah. But the mystery of the episode is the runabout and how it lost power, which then, of course, I did think it was odd that Sisko asked O'Brien an engineering question, like, have you thought of this? And O'Brien's like, yeah, duh, I've thought of this. I'm an engineer. That was a little bit like very stupid of intruding on somebody else's specialty.
Yeah.
The station started to drain of power like the runabout, and they immediately think it's Q's problem. What Q doing it? Wasn't that similar to Cupid, where they thought that thing with the planet was happening and it was Q's fault and it wasn't? Yeah. O'Brien should mention that. Like, it's not always Q's fault. He just happens to be here. They haven't replaced the Cardassian mattresses yet. That would be the first thing I'd replace. They got replicators. O'Brien's got the station working now. Replicate a bunch of decent mattresses.
I want to go back for a second because that was the thing that I wanted to refer ahead to. The idea of I think that it drug on a little bit too long. Q being the suspect, and maybe O'Brien wouldn't have. I can see that he would not necessarily have been in the loop for certain kinds of things. But I mean, because he usually wasn't at the forefront of that kind of problem solving in the conference room necessarily. But I kept thinking, come on, guys, don't you understand? Didn't they put that in the briefing that sometimes he's just kind of there coincidentally, or not even coincidentally. Maybe he sort of causes something to happen or brings something along, but he'll just keep kind of toying with them. And it's usually going to be like a puzzle that he's introduced. And even in this case, it doesn't seem like he did it intentionally, but he still wasn't going to give them the answer. He wanted to keep toying with them and watching them, try to go through the work through it. He even mentioned the difference between the Enterprise going through the technobabble faster. Or getting through the technobabble moments faster. So, yeah.
The Q plot we finally come to learn is he's trying to win Vash back, which seems very flimsy. I don't see anything between them. I don't see why he's trying to win her back. He could just snap his fingers and make her go with him if he wanted to.
Right. We know he's... they cover that in True Q. You can't do that.
But
Well, I mean, I keep thinking of. I feel like we would have had to have mentioned this probably back when she left with them. It's sort of like a Doctor Who companion thing.
But that's not the way they played it. They played it in this episode like Q might be like he made some excuse about I like seeing the wonder through your eyes, but it was almost like he was trying to win her back as a romantic partner, which doesn't really make sense. Or fit with either character.
There certainly was some of that, like the bedroom kind of like, hey, I've got you thing, but
it would have been much better if he was just like, I want you to annoy Picard. That would have made more sense.
I feel like this just gets to the arbitrary lines that I have an issue with Q and all of these omnipotent godlike creatures. I feel like those lines are always moving, and yeah. And so if he's funny, I can look past it. If he's not, don't care.
And this one,
that might just be me. But.
Yeah. Q does mention we've got the whole Delta Quadrant to explore, which is a nice setup for Voyager. At this point, maybe I assume they're already planning Voyager that will explore the Delta Quadrant. So
yeah,
I appreciate that. Q snapping Quark away and back was funny. Always funny when Quark is involved. Yep. And then we get the Umox where Vash is manipulating Quark with the Umox. I think Next Gen established the Umox with Loxana, but I loved the whole negotiation and that. Except the only part I had of that was he was like, I'll knock it down to 22 if you don't stop. And she stops immediately and she's like, we've got a deal. And he's like, okay. And it's like, no, the deal was you weren't going to stop.
What was the Umox thing? I didn't catch that.
When you rub a Ferengi's ear, it's Umox.
Oh.
It's a sex thing.
Well, I do recall that. I just didn't remember there being a term for it.
Vash inexplicably accepts Bashir's state because there's no reason to go out with that creep. But then that's easily solved by Q making Bashir sleepy. So, and then he's asleep the rest of the episode, which I actually thought that was really funny at the end where he wakes up and he's like, oh, what did I miss?
That actually, I did too.
He just stayed asleep the whole time. O'Brien sees that and Q doesn't notice that O'Brien sees him. Come on. Really? He's omnipotent. I appreciated the scene where Q switches from the Next Gen uniform to the DS9 uniform. That was fun.
Yeah.
The Next Gen crew will get the DS9 uniform, but not yet. I think in the films, they'll all batch up eventually. I like Cisco not debating and popping Q in the mouth. And then Q bets on Cisco. Or no, Q doesn't bet on Cisco. Who bets on Cisco? Quark bets on Cisco. That's what the Q is on my notes. Yeah. Quark bets on Cisco winning that. I appreciate that.
It's funny. You abbreviating Quark as Q. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. I should have done that.
So from all the references to you hit me, John. John looking over I had grossly misremembered what was going to happen there because it seems to get lost to how much Q is already physically punching him first.
Yeah.
It's a retaliation. We never see him actually like physically attack
Picard.
the TNG people at all. Anyway, so it's like what. You hit him like.
Well, I think that was the scenario, though. They were like dressed as the boxer. Q had the mustache, and Picard would have never hit him back, no matter the scenario, because Picard doesn't play along. So I think Q was genuinely shocked. I think Q was genuinely shocked when Cisco hits him, because I don't think Picard would have.
No, but he's never physically provoked Picard in that way. It's always been like.
I think even if Q was provoking Picard wouldn't rise to the bait. That's the type of person Picard is.
I think there's something different about like actual physical self-defense.
Yeah, I think self-defense is reasonable, but the way Q was punching didn't seem like you needed to defend. Like it was more playing around. It was just jabbing.
Well, and the fact that they looked like boxers from the 1890s or whatever, they were that kind of get up and everything.
Odo says something to Quark that implies he knows something Quark don't want to know, and Quark's like, what were you this time? And I love that established.
Hilarious.
And Odo's like always in the room as something else, and Quark just has to assume that.
He says, what were you this time? The table, one of the chairs, the wine bottle? I love that. That made me laugh much harder than anything Q said. Yeah.
We're only, 6-7 episodes in, and hasn't Quark won you over on the Ferengi already?
I love him. I want more Quark. Just more.
You'll get Quark-centric episodes, plenty of them.
Good. Yeah, I love him. Yeah, he's better than the entire Quark series. In fact, I read something the other day where somebody was saying how and this was on Quora, which don't trust any answers on that website.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody's like, oh yeah, Quark was such a cult hit. And people still love the show. I'm like, they're all liars. Anyone who's saying that is a liar.
Yeah. Odo isn't materialistic, but I appreciate from a humorous perspective that he does seem slightly tempted by a latinum plated bucket. Like no, never mind. Like, just for a second, he lets himself think about it. The Odo action figure does come with his bucket that he melts into at night. I think at some point we'll see the bucket.
While we're talking about gold latinum, this might be the dirtiest thing I've ever heard in any Star Trek so far. Quark says to Vash about gold latinum that he'll shower her in it.
Yeah. It means he's going to stone her to death.
The fact that it's a gold latinum shower makes me think that is even dirtier than just a golden shower. So, yeah.
Well, gold latinum bars are heavy, so I was thinking more like stoning her to death.
Yeah, I thought he meant, well, I know what he meant, but it sounded, this might have been one they snuck in there. So,
yeah. Maybe. The gold pressed latinum is the main currency that Ferengis use, and we'll hear about it a lot. And then there's latinum strips, which are smaller than the bars. They don't have coins and stuff, so you have to lug around a lot of weight to do business with Ferengi. The way Q is treating Vash is very threatening and abusive. And I know Q's a villain, and Vash even makes reference to being evil, but I feel like this is a way we've not seen him act before. I don't like it.
Yeah, one of the reviews excerpts from a review I read was they kind of had a similar thing of like, he could have power over her, so it makes it even creepier for him to make that move. And they didn't use the term rapey, but they did use the term rapist in the description of it. I don't have the exact description of it, and I felt that way a little bit too. And
whether he was going to rape her or not, it was psychological abuse.
Yeah, and it cuts against the ha-ha fun times with Q, which again, I feel like this episode never got to. That guy's a lot of fun. This guy is a guy I don't care for.
And I don't think I'm looking at what Q has left coming up, because he's still in the Next Generation before it ends.
Right.
He's in the series finale Next Gen, and he's in Voyager for a few episodes, and he's in Star Trek Picard. I think this is the only time he acts like this. I think he, especially after this, he's treated more fun and light.
Is it possible it's a different Q disguised as Q?
It's possible, because they're all named Q. But
right.
Yeah, she could have switched Qs at some point.
I mean, the name of the episode is Q-less, so less than Q.
I mean, I thought it was Vash's Q-less, thankfully, because she got rid of him. But
that's good.
When Q calls O'Brien one of the little people, that's an Irish slur, right?
I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Q says Vash is...
Seriously, or was that like a little bit... I've never heard that. I mean, if you're like, man, unless you're doing like a leprechaun thing, but...
Darby O'Gill and the little people.
Yeah.
That's where my mind went.
That's what I thought it was.
Never even occurred to me. I thought you were just talking, literally one.
I don't think it was meant as a... I don't think it was meant as a slight on his ethnicity. I couldn't help making that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Q says Vash is dangerous. He's right. She's the danger to the station, which I figured early on, because that artifact was definitely your Chekhov's gun or Chekhov's dog or whatever. It seemed very important early on. Oh, I do have a fashion note, even though we don't do fashion for DS9. Vash's earring necklace.
Yeah, I wrote, and maybe this is in that scene, I thought she cleaned up well. She looked really great there. And then she's got kind of the bald look going on. I think that's when Q... I cut both ways on this part of the show, because I think he's trying to make her look bad, and I think she still looks good even with the bald head, the Picard look, kind of. But then I think...
what he says, like, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have saved you from this disease. And I
thought, it's not funny, him making her sickly.
No.
And even if it's like, remember when I could have said, not again, when Q's not fun, he's just a jerk.
Yeah.
And then I'm out.
I liked earring necklace because Quark's mother, whenever she appears, wears an earring necklace.
Oh, okay.
So I wondered if that was like, obviously they wanted to know that at this point, but it's almost like she's appealing to Quark's sensibilities and style.
Interesting.
Yeah, Quark offers Vash a partnership, but she wants to go to Earth instead. That to me is the spinoff right there. Quark and Vash adventures. I mean, you can even keep Quark on DS9, and this actually got me thinking about my alternate episode because we've had this wormhole open for a while, but it doesn't seem like Starfleet's exploring the Gamma Quadrant. And I really feel like, because one of Starfleet's primary missions is exploration, they should send the starship through to be exploring the other side, and Vash could go with them because she knows a lot of stuff as like a guide. Yeah. And I don't want to change DS9 the way it is, so it would almost have to be another show that worked in conjunction with it, where they keep checking back in with DS9 and have frequent crossovers.
You would call it DS10.
No, if they set up a station on the other side of the wormhole. But yeah, I don't know. It definitely seems weird that Starfleet's not exploring, and that feels like the obvious choice of our alternate episode. I mean, eventually we'll see some DS9ers explore the quadrant a little bit and they get a starship, but that's not till way down the line. So,
and maybe it's a group outside of Starfleet that gets Vash to go there.
Yeah, but somebody needs to be exploring, and we really haven't seen that. We know that there's some trade going on, but we haven't seen the exploration or heard of it. Yeah. Again, this happens how many times on Star Trek? We're like, shut down all the systems except life support, but all the lights and panels are still working.
Right. They must run on the lowest of energy, the actual lights themselves.
Probably. I mean, our light bulbs these days take almost no energy. So
that's true. Yeah.
Sisko takes a big chance with Dax's plan to figure out what's going on with the station. He's a risk taker. He's not a Picard.
Yeah.
Kira, I love Kira dearly, so it frustrated the heck out of me that this episode she was reduced to the countdown girl. You got this much time left. That's not Kira's job.
Yeah, she didn't have a lot to do here.
I guess if she did not have an actual role to play, then she'd still be the countdown person because she wants to be involved and force herself in the situation. Yeah. But at the same time, it just is like she deserves better than that.
I agree.
The riches that Quark lost in this episode, man, he would have retired and been off the show immediately. 1 million bars of gold placed flat. That was a lot of money. Then the ended up being Encounter at Farpoint all over again, because let's remember the episode nobody understood or liked.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good point. I mean, I think that was supposed to be part of the symmetry of it, that they were giving DS9 their Encounter at Farpoint. But and I think
that was Q's first appearance on Next Gen, so I could see that parallel. But
I mean, it's like giving that same sort of test.
Yeah.
Here's this living being that I'm not gonna tell you about, and you know.
And he taunted them the whole way. Yeah, absolutely. Vash goes back to her old life, and then we get a really bizarre shot that like Dax overheard that and just like shakes her head and reacts to it. I'm like, what is Dax doing in that scene? Not that I'm complaining we have Dax, but it just felt really weird and tacked on at the end.
Well, I mean, maybe in ways like what you were saying before, Dax having a better repartee with Quark, like picking that life instead of the one that Vash is going back to. It's like, I wouldn't do that.
Dax would do that. This episode was written by story by Hannah Louise Shearer, who has some story credits for Next Gen, like The Price and Pen Pals. Not particularly good or memorable episodes. Skin of Evil will always have Paris. But this is her only DS9 credit, and it's her last Star Trek credit, so we won't have any more from her. Yeah. It was then written by teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolfe, who is a regular producer writer for DS9 and has a producer credit for looks like 25 episodes, writer credit for a lot. It says 73. Yeah, well, some of those are just story editor though, because he was story editor for a season or two, but he's got his hands in a lot of good episodes. In fact, so a lot of the War arc and the Trials and Tribulations and all that. So yeah, Robert Hewitt Wolfe is a big DS9er, and this is his first credit.
This is what got to the writing staff. Yeah,
he actually wrote one episode of Next Gen, A Fistful of Datas.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, he doesn't work on Voyager or anything after DS9, but he's big in DS9.
I think I've said this before. The theme song, it's not great, but I feel like it's appropriate. Like it fits, it works. Like I don't love it, but I think it works perfect.
we had that discussion before, and I think I had the exact same opinion.
I can't even afford words right now.
I guess
I don't love it, but it's.
Yeah.
But I think
I disagree so entirely. I do think it gets better in season 4 when they give it just a little notch up.
Yeah.
They kind of redo it. It's still the same song, but they kind of amp it up in season 4 on. But I love the DS9 theme song.
Yeah, I don't love it, but I appreciate it.
Okay.
I don't have better reference for this, but at some point there's 2-factor authentication in this episode, which I think is nice that they had this.
By then they should have 3 or 4-factor authentication.
Well, sure. I said this before, but this time it really drove home even more that I've said that the promenade is like a casino. I mean, there is a casino there, but it's like a Vegas casino. There's a place in MGM. This will be my plug for MGM Casino called the Grand Shops, and all the casinos in Vegas have them, the nice casinos, where there's the casino part, but then there's just a string of stores, and some of them are nice, and then like MGM is where I would always get a fake tattoo and that kind of stuff. So which just makes me love Quark's place even more. I am referencing this episode. I think it's here it is. Cisco says to Vash, Professor Wu seemed especially eager to speak to you again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's written in the transcript, Professor Wu, W-O-O, but the way Cisco says it, it sounds like Woos. So I played it 2 or 3 times, so I'm sticking with it that he said Woos, Professor Woos.
I was thinking Jurassic Park and Dr. Wu, but
yeah.
But that hasn't happened yet.
And I've been in a show called Dr. Wu Has Been Eliminated, which was also was also similar. So it could be one of his ancestors. There's the big scene with a bunch of aliens, and I didn't think any of them were great. But I thought, as far as the variety, it was Cantina level or Journey to Babel. So kudos again. And I know we've talked about how DS9 does a better job with that because it has to. It should. It's a space station. So I think we talked alternative episodes. So now that I mentioned Professor Wu's, it's either Vash and Professor Wu's, or like they did before, the last several Q episodes, I think, to me, Q is an actual nudnik and not a scary evil guy. more as a nymph, like Mr. Mixoplex.
Mixie.
This Mixie Spitlick.
Sorry.
Mixie Spitlick always seems more villainous than Q to me.
He probably is.
Mm-hmm. Rankings.
That's
Who is shady this week?
I think Vash is, but I say that in a good way.
Yeah, I got to go with Vash too.
I think Q seems shadier.
No, he was more upfront about his stupid stuff.
It was the appearance of it. It was, I think, the thing you were like the things you were saying before about the coercion.
Okay, who was your annoyance this week?
I don't know that I have to say mine, but I will. It's Q.
Mine too. This may be my least favorite Q appearance.
Yeah.
Keith, you said Q as well?
Yeah.
Who are we going to drink with?
It'll probably still be Vash, but I thought about Professor Wu's. And I also thought about the Bajoran date that Bashir was on, but it's got to be Vash. It's got to be.
You choosing Vash?
Yeah,
I love Vash, but for me, it's going to be Dax because as much as I thought that last shot was bizarre, I was like, yeah, Dax is the one I want to get a drink and talk with because her take on everything just is always right.
Sure.
She's the cool, chill, accepting of everybody, but also super intelligent, super ranking the episode. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with Babel. Below.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I need to know what's both below and above those.
Well, Babel's number 2 of 5 so far. So above is Emissary. 3rd is A Man Alone. I'm going to go below that too.
Damn it. Yeah, I go below as well.
Then past Prologue, which was Kira's episode. I'd go below that.
Yeah.
And then last place at the moment is Captive Pursuit, which is Tosk. That was the O'Brien episode. Do you notice how many people have already gotten an episode? We had, O'Brien's had kind of 2 episodes. Babel was O'Brien at the beginning, and then it kind of was different people. But we had an Odo episode, we had a Kira episode, we had an O'Brien episode. This was a Vash episode, but are we putting it last or are we putting it above Tusk?
Oh my God. That's almost a coin toss, honestly. I'm trying to think through. I mean, It felt all right. It felt like they were trying to do too much in this one, and it didn't quite.
I'm cool with putting this last.
Me too.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's where it deserves to be.
I ended the suspense. Yeah.
I do think there is at least one episode worse than this coming up.
I was going to say, I feel like it won't finish there.
No, I don't think it'll finish last. But next week, we're going back to the Enterprise D. Tapestry, an iconic episode. When Captain Picard's artificial heart fails, he's offered the rare opportunity to go back in time and set right the mistake that led to his demise. So we're going to see Captain Picard's rebellious youth and why he has an artificial heart.
I wish he could meet up with that girl, whose name is escaping me right now.
Vash.
Well, yeah, that would be great too.
And it is a Q episode, so more Q.
More Q.
But this is considered one of the really, really good Q episodes, so we'll see. Until then, live long.
And whatever. And prosper.
Live long and whatever.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?